Hey, just in case you weren't convinced that IUL might be a bad idea, we're going to do a second part. So I would recommend checking out the first video if you didn't see it. But the second part is a standalone. So you can definitely start here as well. And especially if you're an agent, it'll be important to know these things because I know that they're not really being taught. So it gives you a chance to kind of get off the hook, maybe go do something to help your clients in a different way. And I brought Chris on board because he knows these details. He's passionate about it. He's debating people on it. He's calling people and say, hey, go ahead and show up and debate me. And they just kind of disappear and don't say much. And what I found in this industry is everybody kind of makes up these names. Mm-hmm. LIRP. I mean, that's just a made up thing. What does that stand for?
Life Insurance Retirement Plan. Like,
how is that even
leaning
how does
on
that
life
make how does that make compliance? How does it pass compliance?
It's a great question. There's a lot of these things that are happening with IUL and marketing around IUL that I question how they get through compliance. But I think
then again, you don't need a securities license.
You don't.
So that's part of it.
That is part of it.
But not that the compliance is an answer to everything by any means, because sometimes I think it does more harm than good. But
yeah, I don't know. I mean, it just people get away with it. And I honestly think as time goes on, people are going to be, the tide's going to go out.
I'm always nice when people go like, what do you think about LIRPs? I'm like, oh, and I just talk about it like without saying, well, you mean Index Universal Life?
Yeah.
You know, like
you're nice.
Because I get they're just reading the book. Like they don't know any different. They're just trying to do the best they can. I'm not talking about the person writing it. I'm talking about,
Yeah. I mean, the person, like I believe the people that are selling LIRPs believe what they're doing, right? The biggest problem, and I guess as we get into this, let me explain. I think the biggest problem in the Index Universal Life space is not the agents, it's the companies. The companies are the ones. Listen, there's been 3 regulation changes since 2015 on how illustrations work. And so what happens is Index Universal Life companies will create these illustrations and they do them to make them look sexy. They do them in a way that they know that the policies will never perform that way, but they're doing it because it's an illustration war. It's a battle like Allianz going against Nationwide, going against Symetra, going against Pac Life, going against all these different companies, and they're sold as like, follow our illustration, look at this, isn't this attractive? Like, look what this can do for you, and it's being sold as very matter of fact and this is going to be how it works for you, and so if it becomes like, what one do you like more, Pac Life or Allianz or Symetra or any of these, and whatever one illustrates the best is the one that gets the business.
But it doesn't mean it's real.
But it's not real. Mm-hmm. And so it's just like a race to, I don't know, the bottom.
What sucks is like, I don't know, if I was just willing to be quiet, like,
you and me both, my friend.
Like, like I always look, I'm like, if I had a TV show and I look at the advertisers, like I would have to speak out against half of the advertisers.
Yeah.
Oh, so
yeah,
like
totally.
I would just, I'm like, no, this is, these athletes advertising for McDonald's. They're not eating McDonald's. Come on. Like
totally.
these pharmaceutical company commercials where like, you're going to lose your left nut if you take it, but you'll have less cholesterol, which doesn't even really matter. Like they say, like it'd be hard. And like, this is the thing. I sit there and think, well, like if I was a peacemaker, I'd probably get hired by a bunch of these companies to come do speeches and stuff, but I can't be quiet about it, unfortunately. Well,
it's good to have you on board. Fight.
It's just, and you brought to my attention something I hadn't really thought about, which is my book, What Would the Rockefellers Do?
Yeah.
Top 3 wealth management book on Amazon for years now. I didn't realize that people selling IUL are using that book
constantly.
And the thing is, it's not what the Rockefellers would do.
Not at all.
It's not. They're like, I spoke to Sheila, who is in their family office, and she was talking about what they do. Mm-hmm. And they're just having a death benefit that's guaranteed, replenish their trust for different economic conditions as one of the strategies.
Yep.
And ultimately, like, why would they, at their level, use a option strategy on a very small like, it just doesn't, it makes no sense, because we're talking here today about the distribution phase. And when you start taking money from these plans, and it's like, what's sad is it illustrates well, but in reality, when they get there, I left the last video with this question. What happens if the policy doesn't perform well enough for the withdrawals that are coming out and you end up taking so much in withdrawal and the policy doesn't perform enough and the net amount at risk is so high that you actually have to start either funding it or you lose the tax benefits?
It gets bad.
Like, have you seen any that have been
So
that way? Because I've only seen it with VUL.
So there's a thing called an overloan protection rider.
Okay.
So almost every IUL has it. There's 2 whole life companies that actually provide it. Penn Mutual and One America actually provide it.
I have a policy with each one of those companies.
The reason that it's not as prevalent in the whole life space is because the risks of needing it are a fraction of what they are in IUL, right? And so that's why we advocate for whole life the way we do, is the controlled elements of it. And so with IUL, this overloan protection rider simply is put there to protect you in case the policy goes into a lapse phase. The rider protects it from lapsing and puts it so like, hey, you're probably not going to have much of a death benefit, but it's going to protect you from the taxable,
so the death benefit decreases.
Consequence.
Well, I'm glad that rider exists then.
Yeah. However.
Okay. Oh, wait.
If your policy, so most companies, and you got to look at each company differently, but most companies, that overloan protection rider doesn't kick in until you're 75. So if your policy lapses before you're 75, you have all the risk.
And the way the law works, if I had $100 of death benefit, does it still protect this not becoming a taxable event or lapse?
I have a hard time imagining a world where that would be a situation, right? So when it's a rider that's able to do it, but once again, you have to be 75
substantially. Right?
So what's going to happen, and this will all make sense as I go through how this is going to work, because here's the deal. As we get into this, remember we talked about it in the last video a little bit, but just to recap for people that didn't see that one, when you have an indexed loan, and that's what we're going to focus on, because I'm just going to push wash loans aside and just realize that you would never buy this if you looked at a wash loan illustration. So I'm not even going to talk about that as an option because it's not going to work well for you either way. So let's talk about the index loans, because that's the whole purpose of doing an index loan. Is they say, hey, if I'm selling you a policy, I say, hey, Garrett, you have the opportunity when you have your money in the policy, you're going to borrow against it. It's only going to cost you 5%, but you could earn, if let's say the cap rate's 10%, you could earn up to 10%. So you could earn up to 5% on the money that you're making, right? That's the idea. That's how they sell it. They negate to talk about the fact that on years where it performs worse, you inject more costs and more risk, because those costs lead to greater net amount at risk. The older you get, that net amount at risk compounds. Which is
the death benefit minus the cash value, which is what the calculations are for charges.
Right. And as I go through this, I'm going to break down how loans work.
So if that sounds like a foreign language, we're going to be going into giving you the details.
It's going to make sense. So as we go through this, I'm going to break down.
Like, I just realized we know a lot about this.
Yeah.
Like, I was talking to one of my clients yesterday. He's like, yeah, it's like so much of a foreign language with so many of these things.
It is. And I, that's, I always kind of tell people I'm not the best teacher. I'll openly admit that. Like, I used to be a Olympic level javelin thrower, of all things.
Look at all these poker player, javelin thrower.
back when I was in high school, like, I held the high school national record for throwing the javelin for a while, and it was like I was really on that track. Had Tommy John surgery, I've had all these injuries or whatever. But when I got done, I started coaching, and I was horrible at coaching new people. like
what are you talking
teaching
about?
The basics.
Too much
I was
all
like,
at once?
God, I can't. I'm like, I was really bad at teaching new people, because it's like, but I ended up taking like 4 kids to the Junior Olympic Nationals. The kids that were already at a certain level,
and the base,
I could get them to the next level, right? So I realized I'm just really bad at like the entry level stuff. But when it comes to this, here's the deal. Here's what we're going to go through. We're going to talk about the loans, how the loans work, because this is all relevant on how these work and the things that you need to understand. The loans, the cost of those loans, the crediting of those that you get from the policy every year through the accumulated value, and then how the loans impact the actual net cash value, because that's what determines the net amount at risk, which is what determines the cost of insurance. Okay. It's all a sliding scale. You you can't illustrate it. You can't excel it. You can't, like, you just have to know this stuff. And when you understand principally how all the different moving parts impact the others, you start to realize, like, holy crap, this is a house of cards that is never going to stand up. You know, that's what it comes down to. And so if you want, let's just get into it a little bit.
Let's get into it, man.
All right.
Let's do it.
All right. So looking at the page here, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. So when we look at this, you could see this person, once again, I'm not going to show it, but he funded it for $12,000 a year up until age 60. And it shows the number here that you're seeing, the $37,884. That's annual income that's planned on for distribution through the use of policy loans, right? So
to
now,
avoid taxation.
To avoid taxation. Now, we could do, if we want to get second level, because, you know, I know agents are going to watch this, and I know some agents are going to try to nitpick me and pull this apart and all that stuff. You could do withdrawals up to basis, up to cost basis.
Which is where the taxable amount is.
Right. So
because one of the unique things about life insurance is it's FIFO.
Mm-hmm.
First $1 in, first $1 out, which means your premium comes back to you before your dividends.
Yep.
And most investments are LIFO, the money you put in, and when you go to take money out, they pay you back your earnings and interest first, taxable, till you get to your basis. So that's a really nice feature. So withdrawals first, and then loans second.
So for whole life, I actually like that strategy in a lot of situations. Mm-hmm. For index universal life, it doesn't work.
It's maybe in retirement, it's a good whole life strategy. In the accumulation phase, you want to be able to put the money back
you never
in,
want
right?
You never want to do that in accumulation. Very seldomly.
But it is interesting that a lot of people on my videos will make comments and be like, "But you're borrowing and you have to borrow to get to the money." I'm like, you don't have to borrow to get the money. It's cash that you can get to. Mm-hmm. You could the worst idea would be cash out the policy.
Sure.
B, just take withdrawals. Mm-hmm. Have dividends come to you versus going back into the policy.
Totally.
There's those things exist, but for whatever reason, it's the hill they want to die on without the right information.
Well, they just listen to too much Dave Ramsey and Susie Orman, and that's really what it comes down to. Right. But so when we look at this, there's a couple things that I want you to look at. Okay, we have the index loan, which is the income. So we have the index loan, which is the $37,000 a year. Yep. You can see now there's a loan charges column, and then there's a loan credits column. So remember we were talking about the positive arbitrage, okay? The 50 basis points of positive arbitrage.
Yeah, so if you could borrow the money at 5, but still earn 5.5 on your cash value because it's a collateralized loan, then you're actually ahead because of that arbitrage. Arbitrage is what banks have done to us for years.
Correct. Exactly.
You make a deposit, they give you 1%, and they turn around and lend that money out for 3%. That's arbitrage.
So what this policy is showing is the 50 basis points of arbitrage. So they're showing you, all right, we're charging you 1,026 of loan charges, but we're going to show you 50 basis points of positive arbitrage.
Why would they offer this strategy?
Because if you can't, so first of all, okay, this is a great question. So before 2015, back when I was in the bit selling IUL, you ready for this? Your head's going to explode. We were able to illustrate showing almost 5% arbitrage. Like there was no rule. You could literally say, hey, your loan rate is whatever the loan rate was. And I could show it illustrating, you know, you're paying 4%, but the policy's earning 8.1% that year. Like,
and I see why.
Can you imagine?
Like, let's do that.
Let's go, baby. This is awesome, right?
Because by the way, if you're paying 5, but earning 8, that's not a 3%. That's like a 45%, 55, 60% return.
Yeah.
It's a 60% yield.
Yeah. It's insane.
Because if you buy a hammer for $5 and
from
sell
a
for
leverage
$8,
perspective, that's the way it is, right?
So
and
it's like, wow, that's a sweet deal.
And you should see how those policies performed, right? When we did income, and the incomes were like wildly higher, and it was like, listen, if you believe
a fairy tale.
It was a fairy tale, exactly. Like, and it is what it is. So
that'd be like me writing on the paper. So $10 million if you just put $1 in. Not real.
It's not real, right? Exactly. So there's a couple things here. So you can see year one, you got $1,026 in loan charges, but you got $1,168 in loan credits. That's a positive arbitrage. So what it's saying is, you're paying $1,026, but look what you're earning. So you're actually coming out ahead. And so now over here in the cash value, but here's what is important to see is the more that you take it, even with the positive credit, you're going down in net cash value, right? And so
'Cause
what's
the money
happening
you're
is
taking out.
right. And what's happening is it's not showing it on this page. It'll show it later as we go through. I just don't want to bounce all over the place quite yet. It's going to show the death benefit going down as well. So the death benefit in this with those credits are eating into the net amount at risk. So it's reducing your insurance charge as time goes on, year after year. And mind you, you know this, I know this, maybe the people watching don't know this. As we get older, your annual renewable term in this policy at 61 years old is not even going to be horribly bad then. By the time you hit 70, 72, 73, 74, 80, 82, 85, it gets like
exponentially
catastrophic.
Yeah.
Okay. So those are things to think about.
But
so
when you're 40, it's not even a consideration when you're looking at an illustration.
Correct.
First illustration, no distribution. Second illustration, distribution under best case scenario.
100%. And here's the deal. I'm a big believer in the living benefits of this stuff, and a lot of things now. A lot of people sell IUL with the benefits of living benefits. I've seen,
But they're at risk.
4 policies this week alone that have long-term care riders attached to them. Which, by the way, great idea if the policy's still there. You know what I mean? As soon as you start taking income from it, like we're showing you, and you put this policy at risk of lapsing, all of those benefits go away.
So imagine this. You have the rider that's an accelerated benefit rider for long-term care. You have 2 activities of daily living you can't perform. They'll let you take a percentage of the death benefit.
Correct.
Spend it while you're alive. But what happens if at the same time your policy is at risk of default? So that other rider kicks in, which is the no lapse.
Yep.
So how much would you
that
really
can
get?
only happen at 75 though. If it happens before that, you're just getting
right. But I'm saying, what if you
tax
turn 75 and now you're going to long-term care?
Yeah, you're
and your policy's in jeopardy of lapsing, so that kicks in. Are those 2 things at odds and fighting against each other?
So it really depends on the company. So if you use that and you actually had a real long-term care rider, which there are a couple companies that offer, that rider is likely to be protected. But if you're utilizing the accelerated benefit feature of the death benefit to do it, now you're in trouble. Right?
Got it.
Like that's...
So there's a long-term rider and there's an accelerated benefit rider.
Correct.
A little bit different. Sounds pretty similar.
The long-term care rider comes at a cost. It's an additional cost. So the accelerated benefit rider is built into the cost of the insurance.
And whether you take it or not,
correct. It's
the same price.
It's available, right? And that exists on IUL. That exists on whole life. The accelerated benefit riders. I will say a lot of IUL agents say that that's one of the big selling features is that IUL offers the accelerated benefit riders. If you become critically, chronically, or terminally ill, you get to access the death benefit while you're alive. And they say, not everybody, but a lot of them say that whole life doesn't offer that. Whole life does offer that. Not every whole life company offers that.
Right,
Whereas,
depends on,
so some companies are better than others, but that's why you just got to look for the right company. So,
and just quickly, like riders are little things that you check on an application and say, if I'm disabled, I want the premium payments to still continue.
Correct.
If I'm, let's waiver a premium, or if I accelerated benefit rider or long-term care rider. So these have, some of them are part of the policy, but you still have to opt into it.
Yep.
Or some are additional costs to the policy.
Correct.
To protect it. So it's insurance on your insurance.
Bingo.
So important to understand that because it's, it's all pieces of the puzzle.
Right. And it's blending insurances together. A lot of times in the past, you'd have to get a long-term care policy on its own, which by the way, right now is totally cost prohibitive for most people. Like you just can't afford the cash flow to pay for a long-term care policy. So figuring out a way to get your policy and life insurance policy to kind of solve multiple problems.
Well, and like there's inevitable claims and there's, I hope I never make a claim.
Right.
Inevitable claim is you're going to die. That's inevitable.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But long-term care is, I hope I never have to do it. So meaning maybe I die without going to a long-term care facility.
Yeah.
So it's nice if it could be built into the policy versus something that you're having to come out of pocket for that may not happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, most insurances you hope that you never utilize. You hope to never use car insurance or homeowners or liability like umbrella or even disability or medical. Like it'd be amazing if you couldn't, but like life insurance, everyone's going to die. It's just a question, will you have the insurance in force when you die or not?
Yeah, I agree with that. And the reason I like whole life insurance when you use the right company that has the living benefits like the accelerated benefit riders is because of the control that you have and the guarantees that it'll be there to the extent that it will be.
Choice.
You want
choice. And if you don't have enough choice because you're overly optimistic, then what you find is a situation where you're going to have regret. And that
I'll
regret is permanent for financial mistakes that you're
100%.
too late in the game to overcome.
And I'll say this, it doesn't even have to be mistakes. Like, so a personal story for me, my father-in-law, November 4th, 2020, right after COVID started basically that year, went into the hospital with a blood clot in his ankle and thought it was just like a pickleball injury. And he thought he twisted his ankle, ended up being a blood clot. They did a scan. They found a 7.5 centimeter tumor on his pancreas going to his liver. And went in thinking he had a twisted ankle, came out with pancreatic cancer and with a 90-day life sentence. And all the oncologists, all the doctors, all the traditional people basically said there's nothing we could do for you. We may be able to extend you to 6 months, but your quality of life is going to be really crappy, you know? And he basically gave up. I remember sitting in the corner of the hospital room with everybody crying and, you know, like it was a real ugly scene, and looking at everybody. And I dropped a couple explicitives, you know, and I was just like, that is not who we are. Like, I'm not talking that way. We don't give up. Like, the hell are you guys talking about? Like, get your head out of your, you know what? And like, let's focus on what we can control, you know, and we're not going to give up. And not saying we're going to win, but let's effing try. You know what I mean? Like, and that's it. The regular medical system wasn't going to help us. He had to like do alternative treatments. We're talking multiple six figures in alternative treatments. And the fact that we had access to capital because of stuff like we're talking about, living benefits, right? Because of the fact that he could access that and spend money and control his own medical directive and not have to follow suit with what the insurance companies tell you can and can't do. I'll tell you that my father-in-law was given 90 days. He's still alive today. He does a lot of stuff still today, alternative treatments. We came out of pocket for a lot of money. He did things in a way most people could not do, right? And that's what this talks about. So when Dave Ramsey says, oh, self-insure because you're not going to need insurance, I'll tell you, you're going to want it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not about the death
I'll
insurance.
agree with him. You don't need any insurance.
Right.
It's not a matter of need.
Yeah.
It's a matter of want.
Yeah. And to me, that's a dignity thing. That's a like him and quality of life, enjoying his grandkids thing still. You know, he lives 3 miles down the street from us now, and you know, we see him all the time. He's in Greece at this very moment, enjoying life still on a trip, on a cruise, right? Like he's supposed to be dead, you know, but because of this, you know, like, so I never talked about the living benefits before, but I tell you what, that experience has changed my life.
Yeah.
And made me see the value in that and the importance of that. Even if you're single and you don't value anything and I'm selfishly just for yourself, you're going to want this.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That kind of deal.
And what would the Rockefellers do? I wrote about you buy net worth instead of build it.
Yeah.
And build cash flow. Buy your net worth, build your cash flow. So the death benefit is your net worth.
Love it.
And then you focus on cash flow along the way. And I think that was instrumental because it's like there's 6 different ways that you could have buoyancy, contingencies, and volatility protectors so that you'd have more cash flow from your existing assets when the market doesn't cooperate.
I love it.
Economy doesn't cooperate. Like all these things and those contingency plans are the difference between enjoying life later on and feeling a lack of freedom and overly frustrated.
I call it a self-completing plan, right? Yeah. Like you get to start with the end in mind and figure out what you want to create for this life and then buy that success, and then you get to work towards it, right?
So we see the death benefit decreasing here.
Yeah, so we see it decreasing. Yeah, we're in tangents here, right? No, so we look at the death benefit or the cash value is decreasing because we're taking this money out, right? Like we're taking loans against it. You can see by year 5 of loans, year 25 of the policy, we've taken a total of $189,420 of income through policy loans. We owe $215,000 of policy loans. So here's the deal. This illustration is showing positive arbitrage, right? Like in year 5 here, 25 total.
It's telling you've
got loan charges
not to take the loan.
Loan charges of $9,411, but that year you're getting credits of $10,853. Well, what happens if the market did worse? Let's say the market did 0 that year. You don't have any loan credits. This is showing loan credits every single year. Those loan credits are based on the performance of the index. By the way, I said it in the last video. I'll say it again. 40% of the time when doing a look back, based on the index that this was in, the cost of money, i.e. the loan rate, was higher than how the market actually performed. So this is showing positive every year.
But you could have negative.
40% of these years, it would actually be worse, if not zero, than the actual loan charges.
But we're in a vacuum here looking at an idealistic scenario that can't exist.
Right. If you believe in this, I got a unicorn to sell you. You know what I mean? Like this is
the unicorn.
It's never going to happen.
You're hoping for,
right?
Yeah.
And so when we go down here, this is what I want to do is I want to like go a little further out. Let's go to because this all compounds, right? And so this is what I want you to look at and kind of go back here. You could see it started with $433,000 the last year that we were funding the policy before we started taking income. That's kind of the baseline. By the time we hit 75 here, we have outstanding loan balance of $839,000. Okay. We have cash value of $280,000. Think about this. Okay. Our loan credits, you can see the loan charges to loan credits still showing positive every year. But if we don't have, and if we have a negative year that year, that's $40,000 of loan charges that we have to come up with because it's not getting created by the index creating it. So if in this year we have a 0 year, where does that come from? Where does that $40,000 come from? It comes from the cash value. 40,000 is over a 10% loss. It's probably 12 to 14% loss of the 280,000. So, but here's the deal. This 280 is the death benefit minus the cash value leads to net amount at risk. You reduce this 280 by 40 effectively. I'm going to just round up to 40. That 280 becomes the 280 becomes 240 because you're taking the 40,000 of loan credits or the loan charges that you would have to pay those out of the cash value, right? Okay. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So now what's happening is the net amount at risk goes up by $40,000, which may not seem like a lot, but you know what the net amount at risk was in this? It was like $100,000 at this point in time. So you just increased the net amount at risk by 40%, increasing your cost of insurance by 40% this year. And guess what? If you have 2 or 3 years out of a 5-year period, which you and I both know is highly likely to happen at least once or twice during retirement if you're retired for 20, 30 years, right? It's almost inevitable, right? That happens 2 or 3 times at any point in time during retirement. This whole plan is busto. Lapse. And if it happens before this magical age of 75 where you have the no lapse or the overloan protection rider, if this happens at 71 down here,
done.
You're now hit with a tax bill.
You have to come up with money.
You have to either come up with money to pay the premium to keep it in force, which you probably don't have, or you get hit with the tax bill. And the tax bill is not just on the income you've taken, it's on the income you've taken and the outstanding loans that you still owe.
Okay, explain that.
So you've taken the income and it's been tax-free, right? Mm-hmm. But now you have
which is the amount above what you put into it.
Right. And now you have the loans, the outstanding loan balance of 800, like in this situation at 74, $762,000. You're going to get a tax bill for $762,000. But taxes based on the income of $762,000.
The bill won't be $762, but it'd be like as if you had that much in income.
Yep.
Because it's a default.
Yep.
So like this happens with people that short sell their house.
Totally.
Right. So like, hey, you didn't have to pay back the bank.
Yep.
But that's a phantom income essentially on the amount that you would have owed them that you now pay taxes on. So it's that same principle.
Happens with people that settle on credit card debt. It happens with people that settle on any kind of debt, right? Like they say, all right, we're going to give it to you.
So you pay tax on your income plus this loan you default on.
Right.
If that wouldn't keep people from doing this.
And that if you can make it past 75, you at least have that protection. There's one company, National Life Group, offers a guaranteed lifetime income rider. They call it the GLEAR. So the guaranteed lifetime income rider will allow guaranteed income, but that's only based on, the problem is they show what that guaranteed income will be and they sell it as guaranteed income, but it's anything but guaranteed because it's based on all
the
performance of what the illustration looks like. It only counts, it's guaranteed based on your account value at the time you trigger the rider on, right? And so it's never going to perform the way that it's sold. So if you're looking at that, I would just, wave caution, to you there.
So explain, think about this. I get, someone defaults on a loan with a mortgage. They default, they negotiate new credit card. And so that's again, seen it. I call it phantom income. I don't know that's the exact term.
Sure.
But this is the same principle. They're saying that, hey, that loan
Yeah.
you used to not pay tax, and now that loan, you're not paying it back.
Right.
You owe tax on that amount.
Correct. Disgusting.
In that year.
In that year.
So you're going to be in a high tax rate
smashed.
on that because you're
It's all at
not
once.
actually making that.
Yeah,
amount
it's
of
not
money,
like earned
but
income
It's
at
all
a-
that year. So like your marginal rates go to the higher tax rate. Like if you're making $50,000 a year, you're paying
12.5%,
a very small,
like
yeah,
small.
12.5%.
Yeah.
But if you're making $1 million a year,
It's high.
you're paying on a lot of that money, you're paying 37.5%.
Correct.
So ultimately, if all of a sudden you have $750,000 plus the income that you took on the gains.
Right. Yeah. It's ugly.
So if you didn't want to do that, you have to start paying premium.
If you didn't want to do that,
You'd
you'd
have to
have
start
to
paying your
come out of
premium.
pocket to manage
Out
the
of pocket,
premium,
you'd have to start paying premium.
which is going to be expensive. So in this situation, let's talk about that. So I just went down to the policy credits and charges pages. So here's where you could see the premium that went in for 20 years. It does show the income as well, but this doesn't show the credits versus the policy
Right, so you had to go
the
to that
loan
other
charges. So
page.
that's why I use the other one to show that. This one actually shows the cash value versus the death benefit. So this will actually help us calculate the net amount at risk. You can always minus or take the death benefit minus the cash value. That is your net amount at risk. Once again, on a year, when we go like to age 74 here, right now we got 384 minus 289. That's how it's illustrated to be. So what is that? $105,000 net amount at risk, right?
Yeah, so you're
in the
only
example that I showed,
$1,227 of policy charges.
right? That's the policy charges, but that actually doesn't go towards. That's not the cost of insurance.
Oh,
It's
that's
just
not the
policy.
premium.
No, that's not.
That's not the premium.
That's not the premium. There's another place down lower
Is
in
the-
the illustration that will get into the actual cost of insurance.
All right, I want to see it.
So we'll get there.
All right, cool.
So
Yeah. I mean,
so
like this is all really bad news.
So it's really bad news. But here's the deal. And so when any IUL agent tries to tell me that IUL is more transparent than whole life, and that's why it's better because they show all these charges, and whole life is kind of like a black box that you can't see all the internal fees. Like
True. On the black box.
sure,
Yeah.
but at least with whole life,
You just
what
know
you
what the
see
net
is what
is.
you get.
Yeah, it's like here's your net.
Right. Like whatever. And you're either okay with that number or you're not. And
Right.
if you're not, then don't do it. Like fine.
Right.
With this, it's smoke and mirrors because the illustration we're looking at is 75 pages long, and you've already seen, and I'm not even close to done having to go through and dissect all the different places that you have to look at, and then you have to know what I know to be able to cross-reference to make sense of it all.
Right.
And nobody does. Like, why can't they just put it all in one sheet and be like, hey, guys, this is...
Again, if you're getting on this airplane ride,
Yeah.
it's got great takeoff.
Right.
You can get up there. It's going to look great.
It
when you're
doesn't
up
even
in the
have-
air.
it
And then
does-
all of a sudden when the turbulence happens,
It doesn't even...
things start falling apart and nobody knows how to land it.
But here's the problem.
You're in air being like, we need to fuel this. Wait,
Yeah, I mean...
we now have to pay for an aircraft to come
Yeah,
in. I mean, it's just, that's the
You're gonna
analogy.
need
It's
a
like you don't
rescue.
know how to land. And look, what if the other plane took a third of the time longer to get there, but you actually get there
At least you land.
and you land.
At least you can
and
be
you can
alive at
count
the
on it.
Yeah,
you know?
totally. You
Yeah.
know, like in this one, you're going to need like Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible, like skydiving and jumping onto your plane and, coming in through a hatch to land the plane for you. Like, I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Like you're not going to make it out of this thing alive. And that's the back end. Now, a lot of times people will say, oh, it's cheaper on the front end. Okay. It's not. And the reason it's not is because of surrender charges. Like, look at this one policy here. He put in $12,000 year one. It's got an accumulated value of $10,391, right? That's great because that's what it's earning credits on if the S&P, if the options that we described in the last video, right?
Yep.
But the cash value is only $2,676.
Yeah.
So that's what you have liquid. So if you're utilizing
Because
this for
all those surrender charges are, it's
they
almost
just
like,
eat you alive.
know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of you buy a home and you're like, oh, cool. My home just appraised for
Yeah.
$10,000 more.
yeah,
Cool. How do you get to that? Well, you got to sell it.
yeah,
Well, when you sell it, you've got to pay some type of agent. You've got to pay title fees.
Right.
You've got to pay title insurance. And you're like, oh, so after I sell it, I get $2,000?
Right. Exactly.
So it's like the fake cash value versus the actual cash value.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. No, totally. Absolutely. It's like, so here's the deal. Now this is going to be fun. You're going to love this one. So everybody understands, just to kind of recap a little bit to take us to this point. Everybody understands the death benefit minus the cash value is a net amount at risk. Mm-hmm. When we have a year in using an index loan, as soon as we inject loans into these IULs, by the way, I want to take a step back. If we're buying this for a permanent death benefit and this guy funds it like this policy is never going to have a problem. It'll be there. It'll be fine. If you're using this for death benefit, as soon as you try to access the money in this though and inject loans into this, it all comes unwound, right? That's where the problem is, which is ironically the reason that most people are buying these is for the purpose of buying, the loans. The reason this is being sold is actually the Achilles heel of the entire product, right?
Yeah.
That's the mind-numbing part to me about this entire product. And that's why I call it the most misrepresented financial product in history, is because of that. And so now what we do is, now that we understand that, we're going to come down to this page, which is the policy charges ledger. And it's going to go through premium charges, because that's what you saw before, and then policy fees, and then per unit charge. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that is what we're talking about. I don't know. Every company's different. I don't know what that per unit charge is exactly, but then you have the cost of insurance, and all of these things add up. And I will say this, I've seen a lot of Allianz illustrations.
Total policy charges include all those different fees.
Correct.
Yep.
Right. So here's the deal. When we're looking at this is cheap at the beginning, because this is 41 years old, right? This is the policy year one. Cost of insurance is only $369. Somebody look at that and be like, oh, whole life would be like $2,000 or $1,500 for that time. Yeah, okay. But once again, we got to look at it. What is it going to look like when, we're utilizing it? And so let's just go through here.
Like, just for example, just on the break in between filming.
Yeah.
I talked to my life insurance agent.
Okay.
I got a standard issue policy with a company that I'm going to start a whole life policy with.
Okay.
But I have an old policy that when I was having there's some things going on with my kidneys 7 years ago.
Okay.
That got me a table rating,
okay,
which means I'm now taking that to a reduced paid up. So
okay,
it basically removes almost all costs.
Okay. Sure.
I don't have the cash value.
Mm-hmm.
And I just start this new policy. Mm-hmm. Whereas if that would have been an IUL policy, I couldn't take a reduced paid up.
Okay.
On my old policy, could I?
You can't reduce paid up this ever.
Right. So
it's always
so the fact that I had whole life, everyone says how flexible indexed universal life is, gave me flexibility.
Yeah. Oh,
to now go
100%.
to this. Yeah.
It puts you.
So I'll have a
control.
death benefit that's now guaranteed.
Yeah. 100%.
I'm not putting in more money into that.
The cash in that policy is going to keep growing. It's going to be efficient. And you're going to minimize all your costs for the rest of your life. Get rid of all the internal charges and fees that
especially
go
all those
policy.
fees with the table rating, because I'm no longer. I've got what I've got.
Yep. The only thing I would say, just side note, is with either one, there may be an opportunity, and just to be fair, just to both, is that there may be an opportunity to get re-rated for that policy. Like sometimes
they said no.
They said no.
They said no. We went for them.
If they said no, then you're in
just
control.
Another day where Guardian decided they didn't want to help me out.
Okay.
Again.
All right. Fair enough. Well, that's
whatever.
I'm sorry. But okay. So that said,
it was my first strategy.
Okay. Cool. So you went that.
So I went and got the blood tests, sent them to them and to the other company that I was applying for.
Okay.
And they said, we won't re-rate you.
In fairness, they're not obligated to do so.
No, and that's fine.
But
and I had coverage during that time at a rating.
Yep, exactly. And so that's just something for anybody that's watching, if you're in that situation.
And I'm keeping my other Guardian policies.
Yeah. Well,
it's weird because I had a Guardian policy just a few years before that at Preferred. And then I just had these anomaly, and I was
a little blip.
I think it was just like massive stress at the time.
What do you do in life that's stressful?
It was like coming out of the 2008 meltdown.
Yeah, exactly.
You know
no, I feel you, man. I feel you.
My 2007 policy, perfect. Might have been Preferred Plus.
Sure.
Got it out. It's like, no, this is table rated.
And
I was
what?
like, but that's when I got the gray hair and, put on a bunch of weight.
At least you still have it.
It could go.
I'm losing it.
Whatever color.
That's why I went high and tight, because I'm starting to lose it a little bit.
It's all right.
Way to hide it. So check this out. So The cost of insurance. This is really important. Remember, I showed you at age 74, right? That and by the way, this is a really well done illustration in terms of IULs, right? Like in terms of, I've seen a lot of these Allianz Pro Plus Advantage policies with much worse fees. Like when I say much worse, I'm talking much worse. Yeah. But there's a couple things to think about. With whole life insurance, imagine you started with a policy charges or with $200,000 of coverage. Okay. I don't know what the cost of insurance would be for that. I mean, it's a black box. So fairness, we don't have the transparency. It is what it is, right? But here's the deal. Once you have it and it's all in place and you're more secure, more stable, you're more in control. Here with IUL, as we start going down through, we have to start looking at the premium charges. We look at the policy fees, the per unit charge, the cost of insurance. Ironically, there's no rider charges on this one, which most Allianz Pro Plus Lives, Pro Plus Advantages have this rider charge. I think it allows people to get more cash value in, and it eliminates and reduces the surrender charge. Mm-hmm. But this charge goes through the roof as you get older. And so it's always a give and a take, right? But what I want you to look at is by the time you turn 90, this is a $200,000 death benefit to start. And the net amount at risk by this time is much less. And you're talking $123,000 is the total policy charges.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, you're talking over a long period of time, like the amount of money that goes into this. And by the way, I've seen policy charges.
Is this assuming any distribution or the distribution we looked at?
This is not even assuming the loan costs.
This is no loan.
No loan. This is just the cost of insurance and the admin fees. That's it.
Under the good returns.
Under the good return.
Without cap rates harming this or without markets underperforming.
Exactly.
So
this is like best case scenario. This is just the pure cost of insurance before you do any loan costs or anything of that nature. He put $240,000 into the policy and he has 120. It's basically 50% of the cost of his entire premium that he paid is going into fees. Before even the loan fees. And then when we look at the we go up here and we go back to the loan charges, we're talking annual loan charges of when we look at let's get down to a reasonable year. At 80 years old, if you're there, your annual loan charge is $60,000. Right? So that means if you have a negative year, look at the cash value there is $240,000. Just let's use this as an example. You got $316,000 death benefit, $240,000 of cash value. That's what, $76,000 of net amount at risk, right? We have a $60,000 loan charge. If the market does zero that year, you have to cover that loan charge. Your income, that $37,000 is coming out of it. And now what happens is, and plus you have the interest loan credits, you're going to minus it by $93,000. So that loan charge of $60,000 is going to come off this $240,000. So that $240,000 goes down to $180,000. Now all of a sudden your $76,000 went to $136,000 of net amount at risk. So you basically doubled your insurance cost. And by the way, that's going to get worse and worse and worse. Right. Like once that happens, I got news for you. When that happens,
so you're in this trap.
You're trapped.
Basically, you're in a trap right there. Yep. That if it implodes, has major tax implications for you.
Well, because
you've lost the shelter.
Yeah, in fairness, at 80, there would be the overloan protection. But if that happened at 70, which, by the way, here's the deal. This policy, looking at it, knowing what I know, understanding that 40% of the years, it's not going to be positive. That. By the time this policy, I would bet money, because I like to bet sometimes.
You are a poker player.
I would bet money that this does not make it to 75.
So that's
as illustrated.
So that's concerning. And then there used to be this company called Whitehall Management.
Okay.
And Whitehall had this philosophy. They work with a lot of dentists. They changed their philosophy later, which was reckless, which was pull out your equity and do VULs, I think. But early
that's a lawsuit.
Early on, it was simply pay off your loans and do municipal bonds. Because you're a dentist, you're in a pretty good tax rate.
Okay.
And 25 years into this philosophy, we started running into these people as clients, and they were doing really well.
Mm-hmm.
No loans, municipal bonds with minimal tax.
Okay.
These municipal bonds weren't yielding high yields.
No.
But the bottom line was there was just so little risk to this strategy because municipal bonds had the taxing power of the municipalities, and you know, a lot of times they're kind of triple exempt on the tax side, and if you're holding them long term, interest rate changes didn't really impact people unless they were trying to liquidate. And so I think of how much safer that was than this plan. Because what are you really trying to get on the rate of return here? And what are you really probably going to get on the return of the cash value? You know, like what do you think these policies have really done in the last 15, 20 years? Net.
Best case scenario?
Best case,
optimize like the perfect
you
design
crushed
policy.
it. You designed it the best that you could. You followed. You didn't miss.
6.5.
Okay, 6.5.
Yep. During a time where the markets have just absolutely crushed it.
Okay, so 6 or 6.5 instead of the 8.5 that was shown.
And I think
that's a
big deal.
Huge difference.
Huge difference. And a lot of people, you know, say, oh well, we're more conservative to illustrate them lower now. We don't illustrate them. It doesn't matter.
But the problem is, this is a plan for distribution.
Right.
And what I feel like is you go your whole life. Like I'm trying to think of the perfect analogy for this. I don't know if I'm going to get it perfectly right, but
give it a shot.
But what they're saying is what you want is retirement income.
Yep.
And the way we're going to prepare you for that is by having no cash flow through your entire pre-retirement years, all accumulation and setting money aside. And now the day you retire, you're going to go with an exact opposite philosophy. No money going in, all money coming out. Different game. What I think of it like is, all right, what we're going to do is we're going to train you for 30 years on offense.
Yeah.
And then when you're finally ready, we're going to switch you to defense.
They can play defense
when the game starts.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now it's game time.
Totally.
And there's no training for cash flow at all.
Nope.
No control over the cost of the options.
Nope.
No control over the timing of your distribution.
Nope.
And if it doesn't go well, you could owe more in tax than you could have ever imagined or benefited from this policy.
Oh my God. Way more. And furthermore, like what
if that chance was only 10% that this imploded? Just
would you get on the plane if there was a 10%?
Would you get on the plane? That was the exact question I had for you. Would you get on the plane if there was a 10% chance it would all implode?
Would you get on the plane if there's a 1% chance?
The thing is, I wouldn't. I used to be terrified of flying. Terrified. My very first flight, I was 13 years old. I didn't sleep the night before. I was so scared.
Were you really?
Dude, my palms were sweating. I was shaking my feet. I was so nervous, and the pilot comes on and goes, "I'll be your pilot, Captain Jim Dye." And I thought, holy shit, we're going to die. Why are we on this plane? It was the longest flight
awesome.
to Orlando I could ever imagine.
That's
and
amazing.
it ruined my entire trip because I knew I had to get back on the flight coming home. And the reality was the chance of that plane crashing was 0.0000001%.
If that, yeah.
And it completely hijacked my mind. So here's the deal. Put yourself in your shoes of this policy when it's time to distribute.
Yeah,
Are you okay taking the amount that's illustrated when it's underperformed? Like all I'm saying is when you get if you're going to do this, regardless of what we say, look at the performance of the policy versus the projection.
Yeah.
If that is far off from what you thought it was going to be, how far off are the distributions going to be versus what you thought? And even worse, inflation was way worse than they ever told you.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So this actually doesn't help you with retirement. I know this is a bold statement.
Yeah.
But what it did was give you a false impression that because you didn't have to pay tax, you'd be 37% better than if you're wealthy than not doing it.
Totally.
So you didn't have to either put as much money in or you'd have some ways to handle inflation. But because of inflation and now because of a lack of performance along the way, even during the best of years, you're going to put yourself in a place where you're actually forcing the policy to crash if it provides any benefit you thought it was going to.
Well, and that ironically, so there's a big influencer on YouTube that has engaged with me on some of my reviews on this, not this specific policy, but the an Allianz Pro Plus policy. And he is looking at it, and it's designed a little bit differently. It's got a little more income, and his mindset was like, you don't need to take the $70,000. If in year,
then why did you do it?
If in year 75, the market's down, don't take the $75,000 or $70,000, or in this situation, don't take the $37,000 a year of income, right? That's what he said. He's like, so you don't have to take it. And I'm like, even if you don't take it, you've been taking it. And you have $39,000 that year of loan charges that are coming out of that $280,000 of cash value, no matter what.
It's like the sands of time. It's like the clock is ticking. It's like a bucket with holes in it.
Dude, it's
and you're like, hopefully I live long. Hopefully I live to 75 where it doesn't matter how big the holes were.
It's not like a bucket with holes in it.
It is a bucket with holes in it. I really want to like just take this consideration. Like love yourself enough.
Yeah.
To think about the problem you've set up for yourself. Like, I'm an author, so I'm incriminating myself here. Just because someone wrote a book doesn't make them an expert. Just because someone's good at sales doesn't mean they're a guru. And just because something illustrates well on a piece of paper doesn't mean it's reality. So let me just say it this way. Would you get on the plane if it was designed by an IUL program engineer? like, would the person that made the IUL get on the plane if their job was to land it?
I don't think so. I mean,
look, this is sad and maddening and frustrating and all these kind of things. And so maybe you can just lower your standards and say, I'm going to take 1/10 of what I thought, because you cannot risk this thing lapsing.
You can't
risk it. And more importantly, if this is your primary strategy, you are in major trouble, because you aren't going to have other assets to cover this.
And when you look at it like that, and what you just said is so true, because what you're doing, if this is your major strategy, you've just created your income becomes your biggest liability. Think about that. Like right. Your income becomes your biggest liability because it's coming out in form of a loan. And look at the page I'm on right now. By the time you're 80, you've taken $757,000 of income, but you've created a $1.286 million liability of a loan.
People don't want to have a mortgage on their home when they retire. Now they're going to have a loan they own.
A loan.
Like, by the way, I got to say, man, Dave Ramsey's plan beats this plan.
It does.
Dave Ramsey's plan 100%. Beats this plan because you know what he says?
You're safer at least.
You pay off your loan.
Yep.
I mean, mutual funds make me vomit. Like,
I know, but it's better than this.
But at least if they lose, it's not creating a taxable event.
Well,
or a loan.
So let's speak to that for 1 second. I know we got time here that we're coming up against here, but
more videos to come. This is the long
when you look at
sessions.
A 401k, because and you can't look at them in a vacuum. People that are selling this are selling as an alternative to a 401k. Get your money out of the 401k, out of the control of the government, put it here. All you're doing is trading the government for the insurance company. And they like to sell the morality of these insurance companies. If you think these insurance companies focus on their morality when they're looking at your policy, go look at how they treated all the people with traditional UL policies that were bought in the 80s and 90s. See how those were treated, right? And you tell me how that went. It didn't go well. And so when you look at it from that perspective, I don't know about you. I believe history has a habit of repeating itself.
I believe that what you sign in a contract matters.
Yeah, totally.
I know firsthand.
Yeah, exactly.
And the contracts that I've had the most complication with in my life are when someone else created the contract and I signed it.
Yeah.
And so what you have to understand is they are smart in how they write the contract. So I don't care what's illustrated. I care what's in reality.
Yep.
And I don't want to see people hurt. I especially get frustrated if people are using my book to sell this strategy.
It's happening.
Because the Rockefellers aren't going, you know what, we need cash value in an insurance policy. They've got plenty of assets, plenty of cash.
Yeah.
They're saying we need a death benefit to protect our heirs making financial missteps. We need it to replenish the trust because of tax environments, because of inflation. Like, they're using a death benefit to replenish their entire, and they're in the 6th generation. And the Vanderbilts destroyed wealth within 59 years was the first level of destruction. And eventually it got really, because they took risk and the Rockefellers managed it.
Yep.
And this was a tool of risk management. And what this does is it bastardizes that and puts it into a tool of risk in hopes of avoiding something and getting something that's not real.
And the worst part about everything you just said is it's being sold as a safe, simple product.
Yeah. And so, look, you can't, like, if people are handing my, like, I love that they're buying the book, but I'm here to tell you, I make $0 on every book sale. Mm-hmm. I don't take any money from What Would the Rockefellers Do books. I don't make any money on that. Mm-hmm. It doesn't impact my life at all, other than I do love my books being read and shared
of course.
And reviewed.
And great.
It feels really good.
Yeah.
But I would rather sell less books. And look, you don't know this, but this is a real story. Okay, so check this out. When I wrote What Would the Rockefellers Do?
Yeah.
I talked to Mike, my co-author. I said, hey, dude, I want to put it on sale for $1,000 on Amazon. He goes, why? I said, because I could tell you a lot of advisors are going to buy this book. Mm-hmm. And when they buy it, they're going to use it in their own way. Like, there were these agents we knew that were selling VULs using Leap, which, Leap,
totally.
VUL is completely against the system.
Yep.
But they used it because they draw some weird conclusion. Mm-hmm. So we sold it for $1,000.
You did.
We didn't sell any. I don't know if we sold any. If it was like.
But you listed it for $1,000.
But we listed it for $1,000 so that people had to get the book through us.
Ah.
And what that did was we did have a lot of agents asking how they could order in bulk.
Ah. And
I just said, there's no discount. You could order 50, it's $50,000. And they just laugh,
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, I know you're going to sell huge policies off of this. And I wanted to create like a certification process that people would design the policies properly.
Yeah.
And so we did create a certification process.
Oh, cool.
But we didn't certify a lot of people just because of timing.
It's just timing.
But that was the original. And then, like, I don't advertise that book at all. We can't, because the Rockefeller family reached out to us and said, you can't run ads with our name on it because we actually own a financial firm. And so I was like, fine. But they had no problem. They didn't have any issue with what was inside of the book.
Okay.
So Wealth Factory runs What Would Billionaires Do, which is pretty much
the same.
Well, there's
same idea.
I don't know what they've written in that book. I'm not part of that process. Okay. I sold the company.
Yep.
But like similar concept, right?
Yep.
So ultimately, that's you just let me know today that what's going on. And I know people that sell IULs. I've talked about. Someone just sent me a clip because this Vanderbilt Rockefeller story was presented on Joe Rogan's podcast from someone who talks about what were the Rockefellers do in their book.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. But I also then found out they sell IUL, or they used to. So, I mean, it's just like, it's saying that apples and oranges are the same fruit. It's saying that, a fake orange and a real orange is the same thing.
Right.
Like, it's just not even, it's not the same, even though parts of the names are the same. So anyway, this has been a long video.
Yeah,
as we do.
Yeah, as we do.
Together.
Apparently we do.
But it always feels short to me.
Me too.
So look,
we're having fun. If you guys
we've talked about how these things can implode, and the things that maybe you weren't sold or told about when you were sold. You can 1035 to a policy that which allows you to roll it over without taxation to another insurance plan and have it in an insurance plan that might make sense for you. I get it. Some of you might be disenchanted and say, I just don't trust anyone in insurance. And that's frustrating. But ultimately, I don't think that the people that probably sold to you know what we're talking about. Majority of them. They just look at the illustrations. They know what they're trained on, just like you did. Just like I sold mutual funds early on in my career. Just like I had a 401k at one time, even that I bought years ago in IUL, thinking, well, I got all these whole life policies. So I get it. But the reality is, it's time for you to take back control of your finances. Be empowered and have a life that you love, and one that you don't put yourself into a failure position when it's late and you feel like it was time to slow down a little bit or enjoy life a little bit more. This could rob those memories, those experiences, those things you've been putting your whole life off for. So yeah, we have a lot of passion for this and want to make sure to help you navigate. In this channel, you can go watch other videos like this to be more informed and even give me feedback. Sometimes people are like, it's confusing. I get it. That's why there's so many videos that we have on this, or the books. And you can go to GarrettGunderson.com/offer, OFFER, and download Killing Sacred Cows, which I think is the preeminent manual on how to avoid the myths and mistakes that people make financially, and What Would the Rockefellers Do, which is about the strategy of how you utilize whole life to create a permanent benefit versus put your money at risk. And ultimately, those downloads are on me. So go ahead and grab them, check it out. look at the descriptions. We have plenty of other resources for you, including, if you want to talk to someone and analyze your existing plan, check it out. Hey, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And if you're enjoying these videos, well, there's good news. More where that came from. So go ahead and click through and watch the next video now.